to the Parent and Leader Guide for Brave and Beautiful. I'm so excited that you're a mentor, a parent, a teacher, educator that's going through this with a youth or youth girls in your life. And hopefully today we will be able to answer some questions you may have and to really encourage you and give you some tips as you go through it with your girls. And this is my friend Elisa, and she's here to help us have this conversation and bring up some really important questions that you probably have in your mind as well. So, Elisa, let's jump in and help these mentors learn more about the Parent Leader Guide.
Okay, great. Well, the first question I have is, tell me about this parent guide.
Well, it's going to be a great guide because it has a lot of questions and discussion questions for every chapter, as well as it has a few optional activities that you can do with your one teenage girl or a small group of girls. And that gives you a springboard of activities and a springboard of discussion questions from which you can springboard off of. So I want to encourage all of you to use your creativity, because you may be inspired with more questions or be inspired with other activities. So this is meant to give you some guidelines, but also give you a springboard from which to launch off of, and be it can just be led organically, with each discussion that you have. So in this Parent Leader Guide, all 4 volumes are already in one book, so it's easy for you to handle. But if you notice, at the end of every volume that's in there, there's some black and white pages, and those would be your Parent Leader Guide extra activities.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you. So you talked about the guide was in a book. It's in a book format. Is there any other way that people can get the parent guide?
Yes, the parent guide is also available digitally, so feel free to get either the digital print or the printed version. Now, I do want to just encourage you that sometimes it is helpful to have the printed version, because you as a mentor, you as a teacher or parent, you want this to be a transformational experience for you as well. And there are interactive pages for you to fill out. So you could always use a digital version, but you would probably need a journal on the side to journal your answers, because that's part of the discussion, is sharing what you got out of each article as well with your youth.
Right. Oh, that's right. My daughter and I journaled together several times at a coffee shop, so that was really fun. I liked that. Mm-hmm. Are there things that we should know before we start talking to teenage girls about these topics and kind of diving into the guide?
Yes, I actually have some really good points or tips to keep in mind before you launch into it. And one of them is to be positive and affirming. You want to create an atmosphere where the teenage girls feel safe to share, and you want it to be a positive, even fun experience at times, something that they look forward to, and also to be mindful to not dominate the conversation as a mentor. I mean, I'm a mom myself, so oftentimes, when my kids were growing up, I got easily into the teacher lecture mode. That is something we don't want to do. We want to create a place where discussion can take place, so be more of a listener than you are a talker in the discussions. Another one is express gratitude when your teenager shares something. Just validate and appreciate, and they'll feel like they have a voice that is appreciated by the group. And also thank her, especially when your teenage girl or girls share something vulnerable. It takes courage sometimes to open up your heart, and that is something you can thank her for, having courage, and just validate that. That really goes a long way. And remember, discussions can be a serious time, because we're going to hit some really heart-to-heart kind of conversations. But also don't be afraid to have fun too. I mean, some of those articles lends itself to lightheartedness, and laughter can be a great bonding experience too. Besides crying together and sharing your heart together, laughter can also bring that bonding which we want. So just keep that in mind as you go through.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Sometimes I don't always have time to go through every single thing with my daughter. Do you have to be a parent to go through it with a young teenage girl? Or can other people do it?
Oh, definitely other people can do it. We have You know, you might, if you're a church, you're going to a church, you can have a pastor or leader in there, organization, you know, work with young kids. You could be a teacher, an educator. You could be a mentor in your girl's life. You know, sometimes there's like a father figure or mother figure in a girl's life. Well, if you're a mother figure, this is perfect for you to go through with a teenage girl. Now, I do want to mention that sometimes there are single fathers out there that really would ask me at one time, you know, can I go through this with my daughter? Well, you certainly can as a dad. For sure. Just know ahead of time that there are some articles or some topics that lend itself more, you know, towards a woman-to-woman, female-to-female kind of conversation. But that shouldn't stop you, fathers, from going through it with your daughters to encourage them, you know, with a lot of the themes that are there.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned that, you know, we shouldn't dominate as the adult or the leader. We shouldn't try to dominate the conversation. But is there time for teaching here?
Good question. There are going to be opportunities for you to impart your wisdom, to impart some of your life stories. So I would say let it be organic, let it be natural. It is definitely not, we don't want to get into lecture teaching mode where you're dominating and doing all the talking, but there will be opportunities for you to pass on your wisdom, you know, and that's what the beauty of this guide is, that it lends itself, opens the doors to transformational conversations that you can have. And so just as much as the teenagers in your group have a voice, you as a mentor or parent also have a voice, and you can input into the discussion. So I would say there are opportunities, teachable moments that can happen organically. And again, it's not a time for you to force your teenager to agree with your perspectives. I know that there's such a temptation when you maybe don't agree with their line of thinking, but just to be sensitive, I would say, to just hear them out. A great saying is seek to understand before seeking to be understood. And that can go a long way. You know, when a teenager feels that you're really listening and you really are seeking to understand them, they actually can be more open to hearing what you have to say. So creating that safe environment really helps in imparting the wisdom that you do want to plant those seeds of wisdom in, you know. So yeah, if your teen feels that you really care about them, their hearts are going to be more open to you to receive. So that's
right. Yeah. So, and sometimes, you know, it ends up that a teenager will be sharing things with you or with me as a parent. I was kind of shocked at some of the things that came up and questions that came up, even a little bit disturbed, or to be honest, some of it was a little bit of upsetting. So what do you think, what's some advice that you have for us who are listening to our teens for the first time? Maybe they're feeling so comfortable that it sort of shocks us what they say. Do you have any advice?
That is an excellent question. I would say plan ahead as much as you can. If you can plan ahead what your response will be, like you can tell yourself, okay, if this teenage girl shares something upsetting or disturbing to me, how am I going to respond? If you have a plan, that'll really help you when it happens, so you're not caught off guard. Now, it probably will happen sooner or later, because you never know, right? Especially with teenagers, you don't know what's going to come out of their heart. But I would say plan ahead and just plan to not react in a way that's negative. In other words, don't act shocked. Try not to act shocked. Don't be angry. Don't overreact. I would say just try to stay calm. Stay calm. Now, inside, as you know, you might be freaking out, I would say, you know, or you might be panicking inside, but don't show it in that moment. Some of you may want to have a private moment where you just want to process that yourself in a separate room. But in that moment, I want to encourage you, stay calm, because you want the child to feel safe. And if we act angry or respond like, oh, we're so shocked, it might make them feel ashamed for sharing it, and therefore not want to open up again. So I would say just stay calm. And Elisa, I have a great tip for all of you mentors and parents. In the Parent Leader Guide, at the end, in the beginning section, towards the end, there is a list of empathetic statements that you can use. it has helped me personally many times. So if you can take a look at that list, whenever a child, a mentor, your friend, your spouse, anybody shares anything vulnerable with you, sometimes we don't know what words to say. Well, that list of empathetic statements actually gives you the words you can say that promote safety, promote them opening their heart, and promote a safe place where they feel they can open up to you and you're trusted. So I would say refer to that empathetic statement sheet. That'll really help a lot.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. So becoming a safe person isn't just a natural thing. You can actually learn it. That's good news for me. What about when I want to share? A lot of times when somebody opens up to me to sort of connect with them, I want to share something. How vulnerable do you think is appropriate here for an adult?
Oh, that's another really great question. Because as a mentor, as a parent, as a teacher, like I said earlier, it is so helpful when you begin to share your own life experiences that connect and relate. So I would say to that question, encourage you to be vulnerable, but also use your judgment. How old are the youth that you're working with? What is their maturity level? You can share bits and pieces in general without sharing explicit details about an experience, but just to communicate the main gist of it. So I would say use your judgment. But the more you open up your heart, it creates that level of vulnerability where they say, oh, if you can share that, then I can share this, And so I would say trust the process. Pay attention to the intuition that's within you about what is appropriate, and I would say you'll be fine.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is a big volume. There are 4 parts of the book, 4 magazines. Is there a reading plan, a specific reading plan?
Yes, well, it is 25 chapters altogether. You can definitely go through it, building one on each other, go through it numerically. However, I also want to throw in that you can also meet the needs of the group, if it's a small group, for example, or even one-on-one. An example would be, let's say you're in volume 1, and you're learning about your value, sense of value. But let's say one of the girls goes through a loss. Maybe their beloved grandmother just passed away, and they're just reeling with grief, and they're crying, and just really so sad. Well, you might want to then say, you're going through that. Let's jump ahead to volume 2 and take a look at the article on grieving. And therefore, you can just go through that article and really help that teenage girl go through that, as well as create such a great conversation about grief and how we handle grief, right? And Elisa, you went through that chapter about grieving, for example, right? It's something that we don't always talk about.
Right. I mean, I was surprised because it just happened to come up when my daughter and I were going through volume 2. And we had never talked about grieving. She has been through some pretty big losses in her life. And when we started to read through and do the exercises, suddenly things came up in her grieving that we had never identified as a source of grief. So it was very cathartic. It was very bonding for both of us, and very eye-opening for me as a parent. I go through the Bible, and we pray together, and we really have great discussions in our family. But for some reason, grief has never been something that we've talked about. So it was really, really helpful.
Yeah, so that's a great example. But you can skip around. Every chapter is a standalone topic as well. So it doesn't have to be, in numerical order. But if you don't have a plan, it's always a good way, to start off going 1 through 25. But again, there's flexibility and creativity in how you use it. So that's why I say be organic in that sense, especially if you have that time and flexibility to be flexible. I would say go for it. Another approach would be book club style. Now, what I mean by book club style, this is not in the Parent Leader Guide written, but I want to add this in. So you can also go through it where, let's say you're going through chapter 1 or chapter 2, maybe covering a couple chapters at a time, because some chapters are very short. you might want to just, in a certain session, say, you know, I want to just highlight a couple articles to begin our discussion, and I want to just read one paragraph, an excerpt from this one article, and you read it out loud, and then you say, hey, what do you guys think about this? And that could start a whole conversation that could last 20 minutes. You know, and so you can be really flexible in that way too, and be really organic. And maybe you can ask one of the girls, hey, can you share, is there a particular passage or particular paragraph that stood out to you in an article you read this week? Can you share that little excerpt, and let's see if what we have to say about that too. So that would be kind of like a book club style. It's a little bit more organic. You can still use the discussion questions, of course, but you can also just share that way too. What do you think about this passage? And it's amazing what can come out from just sharing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking about doing a book club and having sort of a certain time, is there a time limit? Is there a suggested time that you should do each session?
I would say, again, it's what you have available. I would say a discussion, depending how big the group is too. If you have one-on-one versus, 5 in a group, you probably would need more time with the 5. However, you could anywhere from 30 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour. When I do the book clubs with women, we try to get as much done in an hour. So it doesn't have to take up so much time. But again, you never know how a conversation, especially if you're a parent, let's say, going through it with a daughter, you never know how a conversation can actually go longer than an hour and throughout the day. Elisa, can you share that story about friendship, that article on friendship that you and your daughter went through, and what happened? Because this is a great example of what can happen when you're covering some of the content.
Right. Well, so my daughter and I have a good friend who lives across the island from us. We rarely see her, but we're very close when we do see each other. So we decided we're going to go to the coffee shop, and then it happened that we were going to talk about friendship that day in our reading plan. So we shared it with our friend, and we ended up talking about friendship the entire day as we drove all around the island. We went on different small hikes, and we saw different beautiful places here in Hawaii. But in each place, it turned out that these articles we had read early in the day came up, and we talked more and more about friendship throughout the day. So it was sort of like a friendship retreat, if you will. So it was really neat.
Oh, that's great. Right. And so you never know what can happen. It can be an organic conversation that lasts the whole day, like in your case. But yeah, I would say just be open to those conversations, especially if you're a parent. Conversations can happen in the car, right? And it can just be natural like that. But if you're in a teacher, mentor situation that's, it's more structured, then that'll work too.
Right. And, it's so neat because not only did we get to share it with a third person, but the next day I was at paddling, and somebody there, she's a 60-year-old woman called me the next night and said, "Hey, Lisa, I really need some help with friendships." And I thought, wow, we just spent the whole day talking about the articles that say how to be a friend, how to have a friend, what you should do when you have friends and you have some conflict. And so it was really neat. I was able to pass it on not just to our little group who was talking about it, but to somebody who just God sent into my life, or just came into my life and happened to want to know about the exact same subject that we had talked about for an entire day.
Wow. That's so exciting to hear, So I'm excited to hear testimonies and stories from you as well. And I encourage you to email me, because hearing these kind of stories and how this is impacting lives is always such an encouragement to hear. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, sure. So we are, I'm obviously a parent, and my daughter is a high schooler. Mm-hmm. But can we bring like younger girls into this and do middle schoolers, or how old do they need to be, do you think? What's appropriate?
Good question. So the target group for Brave and Beautiful is middle school and high school girls. However, as you know, 75% of the content, the volumes 1, 2, and 3, really deal with knowing your sense of value, your confidence, emotional health, tips, right, and topics, as well as vision for your life. And so those kind of content, that kind of content does relate to, let's say, a fifth grader, a sixth grader, right, a younger, maybe upper elementary girls as well. So I would say, especially if you're a parent, you can pick and choose certain articles according to the maturity level of your daughters, and you can pick and choose and go through certain ones earlier, than later. And so I would say really have to use your judgment. I do want to say that the older a girl is, of course, their brains are more developed as they get older, the more mature they are, the deeper they can go in understanding the articles. They can probably make connections to their life even easier because they're more mature, and the level and the depth of discussion will be deeper as they're older. So I would say it's really a creative way. You could just use your judgment. I would say, because we do want to protect our girls from being victimization, from sex trafficking, human trafficking, we do want to at least start covering these things at least by middle school, so that they will be fully equipped, to be able to grow in their confidence, but also be well aware of the dangers of victimization, and they can protect themselves and others. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, great. So what about people who have older daughters, or is it appropriate for, 20, 30-year-olds to do with their moms, or is that kind of past?
Oh, I love that question, because Brave and Beautiful we've discovered since it came out and got released that women of all ages love Brave and Beautiful. In their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and the oldest was an 87-year-old woman who couldn't put it down because she was getting so much breakthrough and it was impacting her. I just recently, Elisa had a 25-year-old say, "Michelle, I have been waiting for Brave and Beautiful for my entire life." I was like, "Really?" She said, "This has been helping me so much." And she said one of the articles was on dealing with loneliness. And her other 25-year-old gal pal was struggling with loneliness. And so they decided to look at that article together. It really helped and supported her friend. So both of them decided as 25-year-olds to go through Brave and Beautiful together and really dialogue, because it was really helping them. I also have having a book club with women of all ages from 30s through 60s, and they look forward to it. It's growing. They're inviting their family members, their friends, because they're getting so much out of it. They said it's really transforming their lives and really helping them to deal with things. Because really, honestly, as a grown woman, don't we struggle with anxiety sometimes? How do you deal with grief? All these different, even with confidence, we can always continue to grow in that as grown women. And so we're finding that it's a transformational experience for teenage girls, but also for women of all ages. So, which I love, because that means when mentors go through it with your teenage girls, it'll be a transformational experience for you as well. And that's going to be great, because your breakthrough as an adult, mentor, parent, is going to be the breakthrough for the people, your loved ones around you. And so I'm really excited to see how this will impact and encourage you in your personal life as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What about, I know there's journaling. I talked about my daughter and I both journaled. Are we supposed to look at our daughter's journaling?
Good question. As much as we're tempted to as moms, right? I would say please refrain from looking at your child's journaling without their permission, because we want the girls to feel free to journal their thoughts, to their reflections, draw pictures, whatever. You could ask them for permission to see or read or share. And actually, in some of the discussion questions and discussion times, we might, as a facilitator, ask, would you mind sharing what you wrote on this particular page? And that could be a subject of discovery. But I would say with their permission. They always have the option to not share, if they don't feel comfortable. So that would be my encouragement, to refrain from looking at it, because if they know you're going to be reading it, they may not be as authentically, honest in their journaling. And we want them to get it off of their mind and heart, right? So.
Right. Yeah, we found that the quality is so excellent, and the journaling, there's so much beautiful journaling that each of us did individually that we're kind of keeping it for ourselves and going through it like as a kind of a keepsake. Is that what it was meant to be?
Yes. Oh, yes. I am really excited because one of the values that a conviction that I had when we created Brave and Beautiful is that we wanted it to be something of quality and something of great excellence. My heart is that the readers who read it, the teenage girls, the women of all ages, that they would feel honored, that they are worth something of quality, that they are worth something of excellence. And so that was the reason behind making it great paper, great colors, great beauty, because we wanted it to be a keepsake, something that they can keep for years to come. And they can refer back to for years to come. So it's not meant for something like a cheap magazine to throw away when you're done. No, no, no. This is something that is so beautiful, so deep content they can refer to. And I want to share just that beautiful story about your daughter who went through Brave and Beautiful, and then she went off to college, right? She's packing up for college. And what happened, Elisa? You saw her?
She took it with her. She packed my set with her, and she took it. We had to exchange. Once she got there, she realized she had my journal, but she wanted it with her so that she could refer back to it during her freshman year in college. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's so encouraging.
Well, it's kind of like you have this big, you have access to all of these wonderful mentors, and whenever you have an issue, because we've already been through it, she knows, oh wait, there was some advice I had about that. And so she can flip through and look at the article on friendship, say, when things are going a little askew, maybe. Freshman year in college is difficult. There's all different people. You've never been in that situation before. So it's a great resource of just really wise, kind people who, when you read the articles, it feels like they're really talking to you and they're really caring about you. So that's a great, it is a great keepsake. It's a great resource for all of us, actually.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And I also want to add on to that is that, Volume 4 is all about, we connect the dots, right, between sex trafficking and human trafficking, pornography, and sex abuse, right, in age-appropriate levels that we talked about these things. And so, these things can happen even in college years or young adult years. And so we want to equip our young girls, even as young adult women, to be able to protect themselves from victimization. I mean, some girls are trafficked in college or trafficked as young adults. And so this is a really great keepsake resource to refer to, even in those topics as well. Right, so I really encourage you to keep it in a handy place. Encourage your girls to do that too.
Right, like even if they don't get that article that you've gone through at that moment, there's going to be a time where it may be useful, so that they've at least been exposed to it. So I heard that there is such a thing as a rite of passage activity. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, so in the Parent Leader Guide in the beginning, I just have an idea, a great event idea for all of you mentors and parents out there, teachers. It's really fun sometimes to have a rite of passage. I mean, there's a debutante, right? Kind of a sweet 16 parties. I mean, I had a sweet 16 party. It's kind of like a rite of passage into womanhood. And, it could be done at sweet 16. It could be done when they turn 13 into the teenage years, becoming a young woman. It could be done at senior graduation. It could be done as, different time, at a different time, depending on what you decide. But it's a special time of honoring this girl, this teenage girl, and to just make her feel extra special, knowing that she's a young woman that's blooming and blossoming into more of her fullness of who she's created to be, her purpose, her calling, and to just be able to affirm her and her value, and having some older women there to just affirm her, who love her and who have a relationship with her, to pass on words of wisdom to her. You can be creative. Again, there's no rules to this, but I have in the Parent Leader Guide just an idea, some event planning idea that you can do to help your girl to feel extra special and validated in who she is.
That's wonderful. So can you remind me, there's a lot to look at and a lot to learn as a leader. Can you remind me about those empathetic responses?
Yes. So just to remind you again, as a great tool, as a facilitator, towards the ending of the first part of the section for the Parent Leader Guide, there's empathetic statements that you can use all the time. I use it all the time to refer to till it becomes natural. It really helps to have those words. But I also want to say, Lisa, and to all of you out there, that I am here to support you. We're making this video here for you so that you can have a video version of just the beginning part of the Parent Leader Guide. But I am here to support you and to help you process ideas. There's a lot of creativity that can take place in implementing this curriculum. So please don't hesitate to email me at Michelle with one L, Michele, Michelle at explicitmovement.org. And I would love to connect with you. So I'm here for you. I want you to have a successful, enjoyable, impactful experience with this. And so I'm here for you. I'm cheering you on, and I'm just so incredibly grateful for you investing time and effort, your time treasure, into time with these girls that are going to change their life, and just who you are as a mentor, as a teacher, as an educator, as an auntie, a grandmother, parent. You will find out that you have a voice and treasures to pass on to these girls that will impact their lives. And I'm excited to hear your testimonies and your stories of what happens when you do so. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And again, here I am. Please don't hesitate to connect with me. I'm so appreciative of you, and thank you so much for joining us.